What's the hardest thing about writing? Well, it's getting started. Maybe you're having a hard time coming up with a story idea, or you're stuck on where to take your story next. If you want a way into a story or a way through, I have 9 story starters to help you. This free PDF is full of story seeds and prompts to get you going. To download your 9 story starters, go to nancypanuccio.com/start. That's Nancy with an I, Panuccio with 2 C's, nancypanuccio.com/start. So I've chosen a handful of episodes that if you missed them, you can listen to them now, or you can pick and choose 1 or 2 that can help you right now, wherever you are in your writing at this particular time. Writer Unleashed is for you, a writer who has a story you want to bring onto the page and into the hearts and minds of readers. I'm Nancy Panuccio, writer, editor, and writing coach. And each week, we'll explore techniques, mindsets, and inspiration for writing stories readers can't put down. Thanks for spending some time with me today. Now let's begin. You're listening to episode 92 of the Writer Unleashed podcast. Now, at the time that this episode drops into your stream, we are just about hitting the 2-year anniversary of the launch of this podcast. Writer Unleashed was launched in June 2020 during the pandemic, and it had been a work in progress for many months before that. So the pandemic was a great opportunity for me to share tips and techniques and mindsets to support you in your writing, wherever you are in your process so far. So I thought it would be fun and useful to give you a playlist of 5 past episodes that tackle some of the most common things I see tripping writers up. So I've chosen a handful of episodes that if you missed them, you can listen to them now, or you can pick and choose 1 or 2 that can help you right now, wherever you are in your writing at this particular time. So I'm going to give you a brief clip of each, along with why I think it's valuable for your writing, and I'll include all the links to the episodes in the show notes. My hope is that you're going to check them out and give them a listen, and maybe give them a second listen. Okay, so here we go. Episode number 55. Is your story plot-driven or character-driven? Now, as you'll hear in this episode, as far as I'm concerned, there really should be no distinction between plot and character. I think all good stories are character-driven, and writers get hung up on plot, often at the expense of deeply realized characters. So this episode is all about integrating plot with character because they're inseparable. So have a listen. Keep the plot thread alive. You want to keep the plot thread alive all throughout the middle of your story. Keeping your plot thread alive is not about piling on action scenes. The purpose of plot is to force your main character to make not just physical changes, but internal changes. Changes in thought, changes in belief, changes in who he or she is. Fundamental changes. Your character comes into the story wanting something so desperately, it should feel like a matter of life or death. It might literally be a matter of life or death, but death could also mean the threat of a marriage ending. Death could be staying in a dead-end job or a dead-end relationship. So your character has this goal, But the story isn't about him or her getting the goal by the end. It's about who he or she becomes in the process of going after that goal. Okay, next up, episode 78, 5 elements of a riveting first scene. Writers often struggle with creating an opening scene that accomplishes all that it takes to reel the reader in right at the start. Now, if you don't capture your reader's attention, if you don't rouse their curiosity and hunger to learn more in your first scene, you don't get a second chance. It's challenging because your first scene has a lot to do. It introduces your protagonist and, more importantly, makes us care about him. It establishes place, tone, and pace. It sets your whole story in motion. Have a listen. Your first scene should accomplish 3 essential things. Number 1, introduce your protagonist and the significant situation. The significant situation sets your plot in motion, and it gives us insight into your character's inner or outer struggles. Number 2, hint at conflict and complications to come. You want to keep the reader a little off balance here. And number 3, end your first scene with your protagonist in trouble or uncertainty about their future. In this episode, I also distinguish between prologues and your opening scene, and I give you examples of the 5 core elements we discuss in opening scenes from fiction and memoir. So that's episode 78, 5 elements of a riveting first scene. On to episode 50. How much backstory does your reader really need to know? A common misstep writers make is weighing their story down with too much backstory. It's either front-loaded in the beginning of the story or it's put on in big chunks in the middle of the action, but it's usually not distributed in a way that flows seamlessly into the story, and a lot of it is extraneous. So in this episode, I make the distinction between the backstory you need to know as the author so that you have deeper insight into your characters and the backstory your reader needs to know. And I give you 3 tips on how to integrate relevant backstory into the fabric of your story. Have a listen. But backstory is not static. It's not something you have to do first and then forget about. It's something that you can and should be discovering as you write and revise your story. The thing you want to avoid is imposing facts and insignificant history on your character that the reader doesn't need to know about or isn't even interested in. So, number 1, discover the backstory while you're writing. Move back and forth between the present and the past, between front story and backstory. Let it evolve. Allow your backstory to adapt to the story you're telling. So let's talk about what backstory you need to know as the author. So as you're exploring backstory, as you're putting your characters into certain situations and seeing how they react, keep asking questions. Why are they reacting this way? What happened in their past that caused them to do this? What happened in their past that caused them to feel this way? Next up, episode 52. The number 1 mistake writers make with dialogue. Now, dialogue is tricky because we want it to sound natural while revealing character and moving the story forward. But the biggest misstep I see writers make is trying to make the dialogue do too much of the story's heavy lifting. So it winds up sounding false to the reader. Now, story dialogue is different from real dialogue in that it's compressed and shaped by the needs of the story. So in this episode, I break down 3 tips for writing more believable, more compelling dialogue that serves the story you're telling. Here's a clip. The number one mistake writers make over and over with dialogue is making the dialogue do too much. So it's doing too much of the heavy lifting of the story. In some cases, it's giving away the plot, and it's often describing the backstory. So the characters will be talking about everything that happened before to fill the reader in. And sometimes it's just giving the shorthand for the conflict, or it tells all the surrounding circumstances. So characters are saying things to spoon feed the reader information. And this deflates all the tension and suspense for the reader because it's giving everything away in the dialogue. So the dialogue is bloated with exposition. And this happens when the dialogue is shaped for the reader, but not the characters. And last, but by no means least, episode 26, writing about someone you know. Is your story worth it? Now, often we're basing characters on real people we know, people we love, siblings, parents, friends. And in the case of memoir, we're exposing them completely. Now, this can often inhibit writers, and it can whitewash the emotional truth of the story. In some cases, the fear or concern of writing about someone we know can chase us into silence. But truth has a way of rearing its head. So in this episode, I share stories of how other writers have handled this delicate issue of either basing characters on real people or writing about them outright. And I give you some things to consider when writing about someone you know. And I leave you with a writing prompt at the end of the episode. Here's a clip. Most of us write to heal some broken parts of ourselves, to make sense of what's too painful, confusing, or complicated to wrap our arms around. Now, writing can help us reframe our past in a new context, and it allows us to interpret events in a way that puts control directly into our court. Through story, we actually rewrite our past, and that's empowering and healing. Okay, so there you go. I wanted to share with you some of my favorite episodes, but also tell you why I chose them. So now that you've heard them, hopefully you're thinking, okay, where I am right now in my writing, I could really use that episode. So one of the 5 I just mentioned, just go take a listen. And in the show notes, if you go to nancypanuccio.com/92, that's the number of this episode, I'll link to those episodes so you can access them quickly. Just remember that wherever you are in your writing at this moment is exactly where you need to be. So listen to the episodes that you think will help you along the most. Okay, so there you have it. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of Writer Unleashed. If this episode resonated with you, please go leave a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. Reviews are key to keeping Writer Unleashed on the top of the charts where other writers can find us. I'll see you next week with a brand new episode. In the meantime, join us on our private Facebook group, Writer Unleashed Community. It's totally free to join. And if you want more free resources plus writing tips I only share in email, sign up over at nancypanuccio.com. I'll see you next week, same time, same place. Till then, keep writing, and I'll talk to you soon.